I'm David Flint. The program is Save the Nation, and this is on ADH TV, the new and exciting media platform in Australia. The subject today is the declining major parties, or even the dying major parties, in the light of the New South Wales election. And our guest today is very well known. He's the leader of One Nation in New South Wales, Mark Latham. Mark Latham has had a very interesting career. He was educated at Hurlstone Agricultural High, a selective school in New South Wales. And it should be emphasised that he was dux of that school, which is impressive in itself. He graduated from the University of Sydney in economics honours. And after that, he worked in Gough Whitlam's office, which was must have been a very interesting period, because of all politicians, Gough Whitlam was extraordinarily interesting as a person, a wonderful person, I found, notwithstanding some of the mistakes of the Whitlam government. And Mark very quickly became nationally prominent, rising in the leadership of the Labor Party and becoming leader of the opposition. But apart from politics, he's also been very prominent in his writing and author of a number of important books, and prominent in the media, both in writing, in the newspapers, and in the electronic media. Another matter I'd like to ask you about is the government's wish to push turning Australia into what we called a politician's republic rather than a crowned republic, and they're talking still. They've got a minister, an assistant minister for the republic, and they're talking about a possible referendum in their second term. I don't think they will. I think they know they'd probably lose it and go down to a worse defeat than in 1999. But do you think that they would go ahead with a second referendum?
Well, if they did, it would be right out of kilter with public opinion. And Cooning was around out in my electorate of Werriwa. People spoke about the Republic. It was an issue. It's certainly not as important as jobs and health and education and law and order. But people did talk about it a bit, David. It's a long, long way. I talked to thousands of people in a political year in my job. And I can't remember the last time anyone ever wanted to have a discussion about the Republic. And when we're talking about blackouts and declining school results and political decay and division and ineffective government, I think people see the Republic now as the ultimate indulgence of the left. And I don't exactly know what that Minister for the Republic does, but it wouldn't be sitting on the street corner getting much feedback from the Australian people, I can tell you.
One of the attractive features I find of the agenda, the national agenda of your party, is that you are in favour of citizen-initiated referendums. Would that also apply in New South Wales?
Yes, if we had the levers of power, I'm a great believer in opening up the system for more democracy. I said to you earlier on, one of the problems is how the political class have become estranged from the practical, empirical views of people in the suburbs and regions. And one way of getting closer to the people is open up our democracy for more citizen-initiated referenda where they pose the question, and that's binding upon government to follow the will of the people. I mean, we're not democratic enough in our system, and that's why the major party vote is declining. So where's the harm in allowing people to get enough support to pose a referendum question and then have that determined again by a broader base of democratic will?
The Barry O'Farrell opposition proposed setting up an inquiry into whether there should be recall elections. That is, people by petition could recall a member of Parliament. And they did when they got into government. They set up a committee of inquiry, and I think to their great surprise, the committee of inquiry came down with a recommendation saying that recall elections were not inconsistent with the Westminster system. We haven't seen anything on that report since that time. Would One Nation be in favour of recall elections, do you think?
I think they've got potential. I'd want to study them a bit more. Certainly the people in politics don't want to get recalled out, but if you're doing a very bad job, why shouldn't your local electorate be able to say, hang on, we'd like to have a more up-to-date assessment of this person's ability and vote on whether they stay as a member of Parliament. The 4-year term is not as long as the House of Commons, but the 4-year term we have here, I think mid-term, if people wanted to recall an MP and start again, I think that's democratically sound, but I'd want to have a look at the mechanics of how it works in practice. So citizen-initiated referendum we support. The recall, we've got an open mind.
On another matter, I think one of the things which emerged during COVID, one of the really appalling things during COVID, was the way in which the power to make regulations, I think, was abused. For example, in New South Wales, there was an announcement taken that they would close down the construction industry. They closed it down for a number of weeks and it cost billions of dollars. What on earth it did in relation to COVID, I do not know. I can't see any possible advantage. It seems to me that the power to make regulations should be more highly regulated, in that, for example, it should come before, any major regulation should come before the Executive Council. There should be an explanatory memorandum, as there is with legislation, explaining why this proposal is being taken, and it should be open to either house. Any regulation should be open to either house to disallow that. Quite often, at least at the federal level, they've taken away the power of disallowance. Do you think we should be monitoring more closely the power of the executive government to make regulations?
Absolutely. The Legislative Council, where I sit, does have an ongoing power to disallow regulations, but in the COVID period you're talking about, they suspended the Parliament. So we got very close to a dictatorship, didn't we? A dictatorship of the executive, in that the Parliament was suspended. The upper house couldn't disallow that egregious regulation closing down the construction industry with no public or health safety justification or outcome. So what can you do? If they suspend the Parliament in the so-called emergency of COVID, which is a huge, massive overreaction over a long period of time, then democracy itself starts to wilt.
That should not be constitutionally possible, I would think. I would think that you could have still met. You could have met by Zoom. You could have met electronically.
We tried to. We tried to. No. It's an interesting point. Where the upper house here tried to meet, but there was a standing order, an archaic one that nobody thought would ever be invoked, that without a minister in the chamber, the Parliament the chamber collapsed. So the government denied a minister. The government sent a lackey, Trevor Khan, who was the deputy president, to move the point of order that there's no minister here, there's no member of the executive here, minister or parliamentary secretary, therefore the meeting collapses. And that's what happened. So we tried to meet and they had an obscure standing order, which has now been changed, that allowed the government to continue with the suspension of Parliament.
Wearing another hat, I had to join with a group of people to see a federal minister, and one of his offsiders said, this was in the early days of the federal government, they said, well, do you think we should hold a royal commission? Would there be any advantage in holding a royal commission into what happened under COVID? And I said, well, that really depends on whom you appoint. Because you should really, if there were a royal commission, it should consist of judges who have the enormous respect of the population, and there should be 3 of them. There shouldn't be just one, so that you get a broad view. But that period really needs a serious examination by a solid royal commission, I think, at both the state and federal level. Do you think One Nation would be in favour of a royal commission at the state level to look into this?
Yeah, Pauline Hanson has said that. The Royal Commission would need to be national. But David, we'd need another hour of your program to go through the long list of COVID errors, overreactions, hysteria, missteps. It was a dreadful, dreadful period. Thankfully, most people have moved past it now. But yes, it's our policy to have a Royal Commission to make sure the mistakes aren't repeated in future.
Mark Latham, you've been very generous with your time, and I do appreciate that, and I'm sure the viewers appreciate that, particularly as I believe you're approaching your birthday. Is that not right?
Yes, next Tuesday. But yes. Yeah, that's right. But more immediately, the meetings and media work and activities of an election campaign. Tomorrow it's 4 weeks till election day. So pretty busy at the moment, David, and it's been good to chat across such a wide, interesting range of issues with you. Yeah, and I hope that the viewers have found it useful. And viewers, don't forget, vote One Nation on the 25th of March for a basic course pitch, advertising pitch. That's what it's all about.
What's the position in the Legislative Council? You can vote above the line or below the line, can't you?
Yep.
And you can be. It doesn't have to be preferential above the line. Is that right?
That's optional preferential. You can vote full out under the line, but our recommendation above the line in the One Nation box, you just need to vote one for One Nation, and that will elect the team that I'm heading. So I'm up for re-election, and you'll get people who hopefully will hold the balance of power, take the rough edges off a Labor Green government and all the other Matt Keane madness that's around. So, we're a party of fighters with a very good record on the issues we've been talking about. So hopefully people will vote for One Nation in that square above the line.
And you made yourself available freely, did you not, for this election? You stood down so that you could have an election in which you would be involved. You recalled.
I'm interested in.
You recalled yourself,
myself,
did you not?
Yeah, on the recall, yeah, right. Right, on the recall, I recalled myself.
Yes.
The 8-year term in the upper house is too long.
Yes.
So for democratic accountability and to get people to judge my performance over the last 4 years, I'm up for re-election on the 25th of March. Yeah, it's a self-imposed recall. Good point.
Well, congratulations on such a respect for democracy. Thank you very much. And I wish you well in the election. I'm David Flint. This is Save the Nation. It's on the new platform, the new and exciting platform, ADH TV. Thank you.